Welcome back to the bets.com.au betting recap from round 9 at Sports Pez. Jez, Ryan, Tuck Sport Takes from bets.com.au. We like to call ourselves sports riders, but after this weekend, Jez, can we call ourselves that?
Yeah, well, we can call ourselves sports writers, but I don't think we can call ourselves experts over the last 2 weeks since we've been doing the show. It's such a kick in the balls, isn't it? Like, so typical when it's been on a good run, great ideas, great shows. Let's break down all our professional expert betting thinking, and then you just go in this big, heavy downward spiral. So it's Murphy's, but we'll roll with it. You got to take the good with the bad. And like we always say, mate, we're playing the long game. Got to play the long game.
That's it. So today, if you're watching, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. We hit 1,000 subscribers over the weekend. It's fantastic. And the channel keeps growing at a fantastic rate. So obviously, you guys are liking what we're doing. And hopefully this longer form content can be a little bit more engaging in letting you know how we think about our bets and what influences us when we're doing our previews into each game. This episode, we're going to look back at round 9. We'll go through our tips for each game. Apart from Jez and I, there's also Andy who normally writes all Saturday games. We'll go through his tips as well. He was actually quite successful over the week.
Lucky he's on board. Andy's carrying the team at the moment.
Yeah. And then we'll break down 2 of the games, one each from Jez and I, and then we'll look ahead to round 10 and give some early shouts on what we think we might be able to expect from the upcoming games in round 10. So, Jez, let's get straight into our tips from last week. And the numbers here. Do we have a total number?
I think it was 4,
5, 7, 10, 11.
11 from 24.
11 from 24.
So a little bit under 50%. Yeah, it's pretty much the same last week as well, around about there. So we've been, doing it a little bit tough in a bit of a downward spike at the moment, but that's because we had such a upward spike at the weeks before we did the program.
But when we thought we were doing well, it's like, let's show our followers how good we are.
Yeah. But it's not about that though. I think, like, obviously it sucks at the moment that we are in a bit of a dip, but the law of averages say that if we keep putting our method in practice, then we should start seeing eventually some better results. I think, like we said off air, it feels like it's a little bit of a change of guard at the moment in the NRL. It's like a lot of the trends that were happening earlier to start the season are also starting to now go back to the norm. So you could say, because we had some trends that we've been following, you've been looking at teams that have been scoring or not scoring, and teams that have been sort of doing good. It feels like there is a little bit of a shift. You can take the 0-3 Panthers Broncos game, and that's the perfect example. You've got the Panthers on the bottom of the ladder. Brisbane have been doing okay at Suncorp Stadium and just get absolutely belted. And same for the game that we'll break down a little bit later between the Dolphins and the Chooks. The Chooks now all of a sudden can score points, which they've done in the last couple of weeks. So now it's, I guess, time maybe. I don't know. We'll see who they play in round 10, but we'll see if we jump on the Chooks to score some points. But who knows? But anyway, yes, we start off with the...
Before you get into that one, I just you touched on trends, and it made me think quickly about, we do keep a bit of trends. We follow some trends just to kind of see where the league is. And because we know that overs and unders and favourites, underdogs, or mainly overs, unders, the betting companies want to keep that as close to 50% as possible, because over the term of the season, if they're getting the same weight from both sides, then they are making money on their little bit of juice there in the middle. Right now, prior to round 9, so heading into round 9, 56% of games had gone under the game total, which is a pretty big number considering how close it has been for a number of years. If you look at all the years combined since the start of 2019, it is bang on 50%. It's
That's incredible.
629. There's 4 games. So it's actually 2 games difference, because once you put the 2 games to the other side, they're even. 629 to the under, 633 to the over. And that's in
insane.
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 8 rounds into 2025. So that
That's
is
nuts.
an extremely strong indicator of, okay, well, I don't know how the unders and overs fared in this week, but if that 56% is the same or even more, then let's smash the unders, because it's going to revert sometime soon. The 1 to 12 and the 13 plus, also since the start of 2019, also 50%. A little bit different. It says 5 game swing, so 636 to the 1 to 12 and 626 to the 13 plus.
But
so
isn't
far,
that like insane? Because that like has nothing to do with the betting companies at all. Like that's just the results. What, 1 to 12, 13 plus? That's not your underdog ATS, like against the spread where they're setting the line. That's just 1 to 12, 13 plus. That means that 2 try margin is smack bang on where games finish. That's crazy.
And I think it allows you to kind of, when you weigh up the options of, do I take this margin or that margin? And if you think the value of a 13 plus is a lot larger, then it's, you're well within your rights to take it, because your payoff is potentially much larger than the value of the 1 to 12. The risk might be a little bit higher, but your potential to making more money is a lot higher. So far this season, 34 games have finished with a 13 plus margin, and 30 games to the 1 to 12. So that's prior to round 9. So 53%. 13 plus, 47% 1 to 12. So a couple of those things that we follow. The favorite has won 38 games compared to 26 of the underdog, and the home team as well, almost exactly the same numbers, 38 games to 26 prior to round 9. So interesting trends.
There you go. Yeah, I think we had a discussion about home teams on, I'm not sure what pod. There's so many pods going out at the moment, but we had a bit of a discussion on how much weight there actually was in home teams, but obviously shows now that it is pretty important, at least in 2025. So
just under 60%.
Let's power through here these tips. I think in game 1, Cronulla versus the Eels, we thought that there was a likelihood possibly that Parramatta could steal the game. But if we were tipping, we were definitely going to go the Sharks. But what we did tip is the 5.5 margin, which we did lose because they lost by 10, I believe, in the end. And then we also tipped that Cronulla would stay under 26.5 points, and they got a penalty with no time left and ended up, scoring 28. So we were right on the line there to probably go 2 from 3. The one we did get is Dylan Brown to score a try. So that was paying over $3 for an anytime try scorer for Dylan Brown. I think it was like 340 or 360 or somewhere there. So pretty much saved us in that game. If you're putting 1 unit on everything, we would have come away with 0 return on investment, basically, somewhere there. So yeah, that was a little bit of a tough result. I think the Sharks scored more points than Eels. Backing the Eels defense is probably never a smart idea in hindsight, but it was more about the territory game. We were really diving in and backing that Moses was going to make a difference again, like he did against Wests. And the Sharks, he did in certain periods of the game, but the Sharks still had a little bit more go forward than I think we expected. It's in an area where they were actually struggling, or they were struggling to score, struggling to convert their field position into points. But coming up against the Eels defense, they still got the same amount of chances and then scored. So that's where that one went down. And then we can dive maybe a little bit deeper into the next match here between the Roosters and the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins the week before had a game of two halves where they let the game slide. They dominated the first half. Who did they play? Shocking. Do you remember who the Dolphins played? They were beat
last week.
No, yeah. They ended
Canberra.
up losing the match. Canberra, that's right. So they dominated the first half. I think they scored 20. They were leading 24-10 or 28-10 at the first after the first half, and then
34
lost.
to 10.
So there you go. So we were sort of backing that they were going to sort that defensive problems out. But if you watch that game live, you saw that the Dolphins actually had some major issues. Defensively, they were very, very short on the edges. There was holes. James Tedesco just tore them absolutely apart. And so it's pretty tough. It puts you in a really, really bit of a difficult position now that expect when you're looking at the Dolphins defense, because they just can't seem to focus for both halves at the moment. It was but in the game against the Roosters, they just leaked, and it could be to do with some of their injuries through the middle. But at the same time, I think you need to be really, really wary of the Dolphins at the moment because their defense is in tatters. And when it comes to the Roosters were one of the worst attacking teams in the competition leading into the game, but seem to really, really find their feet and attack the right areas of the Dolphins. But if you look, we dive in a little bit to how the game played out. Is this the first, this the whole game stats?
Yeah, which ones do you want? You want first
Yeah,
half?
we'll go into the first half first, and you can sort of see that in the first half, the Roosters dominated the ball. They scored 3 tries to 1. I think the Dolphins got a try fairly late through the hammer. But you really, really see that their territory resulted in a one-sided half because they had close to over 300 more run meters. They had 3 line breaks to 1, and then tackles in the opposition 20 were 13 to 4. So those 3 stats are stats that we really focus on when comparing different teams, but you've also got to put it into perspective, especially tackles in opposition 20, because we like to see, obviously, if a team has more territory, that they also have more tackles in the opposition 20, and then how that then relates to the amount of tries that they can score. Because some teams, like the Sharks, like we mentioned, have had a lot of good territory, but have been struggling to score. So when it comes to the Roosters, though, we can now say that's a pretty good strike rate, 13 tackles inside the opposition 20 for 3 tries, and it's very, very similar. If we move to the second half, you can see that the territory actually shifted. But when you're looking down at tackles inside opposition 20, you see that most of the 57% of the territory was then between the 20 and the halfway line for the Dolphins. So they were winning that battle, but it was the Roosters that were still getting more chances. And that's why I'm pretty sure they outscored them again 4 tries to 3 in the second half. So 5 line breaks, 16 tackles in opposition 20, and once again won the run meter battle. So you can really, really see, okay, they had better quality possession than the Dolphins, and that's why they scored. But the Dolphins had a little bit more possession, had a little bit more territory, and did a better job, but just not as good as the Roosters. And that's where that game sort of fell apart. But it all fell
You can
apart
see
based on
the difference in run meters, 500 meters difference in 20
yeah.
runs,
So it's
45
over
missed
30%.
tackles for the Dolphins as well, which is
Mm.
just too poor. And
Mm.
that's something that's been a little bit of their kind of Achilles heel, especially through the second rower, center and a half, that little corridor there. They have struggled through essentially kind of since they started because their halves have not been fantastic defenders,
Mm.
and the second rowers have been kind of shifting around so much, throughout the years. They've had different guys in there almost on a week to week basis, either it's through injury or through form or whatever it could be. So building those combinations hasn't really done enough for them to stop these types of attacks that we've seen from the Roosters on the weekend.
Yeah. And they've had a little bit of trouble, like if we just take even one step in, they've been moving their front row props and also their lock. They've had a lot of injuries. So I think it also affects how everybody, the second rowers are cramming in as well, because they've got to do a little bit more work through the middle. The combinations aren't there, and then they're able to then get attacked on the outside and they become vulnerable against their halves. Like you said, having sort of Nikorima and Katoa, two sort of smaller guys in the line, very, very easy targets to run at.
Pretty good kick meters from the Dolphins here, 570 odd compared to the Roosters just over 400. I guess that's something that Katoa especially has been good at, and you see a difference in other teams, especially with Mitch Moses at Parramatta, how much that kicking makes a difference. Jerome Hughes in Melbourne, how much their kicking makes a difference. I think if Katoa can continue to kick and deliver territory and field position, then they have a greater chance of scoring points. It's just they have to fix their defense.
Yeah. All right. Let's move
Should
on,
we move on
to
Rabbitohs and
Andy's
Knights.
Yeah. So Rabbitohs Knights, it was the whole headline for that was unders. But the Knights seemed to find a way to score. Finally, they were averaging around 10 points per game, and they put on 30 against South. So tips there were the under 44.5, which paid. Bradman Best also scored at 3-1, but the Rabbitohs under 21.5. So there you go. So it was a 3 from 3 there, not a 2 from 3 there. I thought that Andy had tipped St. George under Newcastle under 21.5. So there you go. He hit the nail on the head there with 3 from 3. So
how's
perfect
$3
tipping
for Bradman Best as anytime try scorer? I love that.
But how many tries? Yeah, well, they haven't been scoring, I guess.
No, yeah, exactly.
So it must just be the effect of how the whole team has been attacking. So great odds there, but I don't think you put a lot of. If you're looking at that game, then do you put a lot of weight on Newcastle's attack there, Ryan, or are you? It's more about the Rabbitohs' defense at the moment.
No, I mean, we have seen even throughout the period with the last kind of 3 years where the Knights really have struggled to score points. In certain games, they turn it on, and it's just a matter of the defense not being up to scratch, and it's maybe they're not pressuring Kalen Ponga enough so that he gets a bit more room to move, or Fletcher Sharp has been doing great things, and he maybe just had a bit of a breakout. I didn't watch a lot of this game. I've watched the highlights, so it's difficult to see how they built the pressure and the momentum. But I think the Knights always have star players. They have an X factor, and it's more about if they have the opportunity to use it, which they obviously did here, which would mean, to your question, it's more about the Rabbitohs defense in this game than the Knights suddenly being able to score, because they have that opportunity when they can.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Then we move on to the Cowboys and New Zealand.
And he had a Cowboys head-to-head win there, which didn't eventuate, unfortunately, for him. But over 47.5, that hit was 30-28, I think I just seen there.
Yeah.
And Nanai did
Nanai
score a try.
So another 3-1. So good value so far early on try scorers.
So just a quick kind of insight to how Andy was thinking here. He was backing some trends that the Cows were on a 4-game win streak. They'd scored 50 against the Titans the week before. They'd gone over this total in 4 of 7 games. Warriors have also gone over in 2 of their last 4. And Nanai's try-scoring form. So he was backing kind of recent trends and also team trends in his picks here. And around, poor defensive efforts allowing a lot of points through. So kind of all eventuated in the end. It was just the tip was a kind of flip of the coin, and he ended up on the wrong side, as we are well aware it can happen.
Absolutely. Then we go to Tigers Dragons. Now, he had the Tigers to win, which he hit. He also had the good old Taruva try scorer bet. That feels like that hits every single week at the moment, doesn't it, Taruva? If West Tigers score, then it's definitely coming from that side of the field. And then Dragons under 21.5. Now, it's also, following recent trends again here. He had Dragons had scored under 21.5 points in their last 2 games. And we have also seen in West Tigers games, I would say just off the top of my head, the games that they've been winning, it's been based on them being very strong, like stronger defensively. They had that really, really fast start to the season where they were the best defensive team in the comp, I think, over the first 3 or 4 rounds. And then it all sort of fell away a little bit there. And then they had all this Lockie Galvin drama, and things shifted a little bit. So you can see definitely the train of thought there of the Dragons scoring under 21.5 points. But this game turned out to be a little bit of a shootout, and it did eventuate though as Dragons losing their 5th Magic Round game in a row. They are 0 from 5 in Magic Round. So that's one to remember for next year. But I don't know sort of how you look at this game heading into, I don't know, both of these teams next week. I don't think you put a lot of weight again on the Dragons attack. And the West Tigers seem to still be finding a way to hang around. I think they're still definitely overachieving in most people's books.
I think it's a little bit of their kind of opponents as well. I don't think anyone thought West Tigers were winning the comp this year, but we expected improvements, and they've definitely shown improvements. And I think they were quite honest in saying as well that, we might not even be a top 8 team this year, but you will see significant improvement in the way we play. And we definitely have seen that already. And if they were to lose every single game for the rest of the year, they've still made massive improvements in their gameplay. And
how long do you think that the mindset holds if they keep winning, that they're going, okay, we just want to keep seeing improvements without sort of shifting? Then the mindset heading into the season is you want improvement, and then you go, okay, we want to make the 8, and then how does that then affect how they play? Because you just want to be doing, one day at a time, keep things improving. But I think you get close enough and then all that turns to bullshit, because you obviously have a chance. You see the chance of making finals.
We see they're in 8th right now after this weekend. Still yet to have their bye, and their differential is in a positive number. So I think you probably after the second Origin game, or just before around the third Origin game, if they're still there, then I think definitely the players' mindset will shift, even if the coaching staff is still trying to reiterate, hey, we're just focused on improvements. But I reckon that's the point where you start the run home, and your players are going to be like, hey, we're on one here. We can maybe jag a first round win in a finals against the Sea Eagles or the Sharks, whoever it could be in that.
And then you never know.
5 to 7.
Be interesting to see how that plays out. All right.
Let's positivity. Have just a quick break. Bit of time to breathe, eh? Then come back and hit the Sunday games. The wrong graphic there. Fantastic.
No, it's promo.
But I was almost going to press the wrong button to kind of turn it all off. Lucky I didn't do that. I didn't know which numbers were mine. All right. Canterbury Bulldogs, Gold Coast Titans was our most successful game out of us two sitting here, and mine most successful. Um, 3 from 3. And the thought process here was, despite the Dogs missing a heap of players, I thought they were still going to be strong defensively and their attack wouldn't stagnate enough, especially against this opponent, to warrant them losing the game or only winning by 2 tries. I had the 13 plus was my main pick here. We saw earlier in the year they were missing Burton. He was injured. Kickow was out, I think suspended. There's a couple of other guys that were out, and you wouldn't even know it on the field because they were just marching along. They were doing so well. So I looked at that and I said, okay, I think we can apply that here against this team of the Titans. If it had been the Storm or even the Panthers or the Broncos or the Raiders, then I probably would have adjusted the thought process a little bit. But against the Titans, they were one of the worst teams, or they are one of the worst teams defensively in the league. 86% of their games this season have been decided by 13 plus points. They rank one of the lowest in terms of opposition run meters, opposition tackles inside 20, opposition line breaks, you name it, they're one of the worst teams in that defensive metric. And the Bulldogs are top 4, and I think even top 3 in a lot of attacking metrics. So it was a simple kind of process of putting those two together and looking at previous history of, good attacking teams against bad defensive teams. How does that play out? And especially this season, then we're seeing these kind of results. And it was, a pretty easy game to pick, to be honest. I was a little bit worried towards the end of the game.
The scary ones.
Yeah. The Bulldogs are only up by 14 points and the Titans were attacking and looking strong. And they like to jag a late try.
Yeah. Rubbish tries.
And I was, but luckily, it didn't happen, and I think the Bulldogs actually scored again just to put the total out of reach. Jacob Preston. Now, I've been on a lot of forwards this year in scoring, and I think just to kind of give a bit of insight as well, Jez, you and I, we don't like to take the easy bets, always the wingers to score or the low odds or the alternate lines to make sure we're winning bets. We like to throw a little bit of caution to the wind, try and find extra value, which means over the course of the season, we're hitting at higher odds, the ones we do hit. Maybe we're hitting a little less often, but the ones we do hit, we're hitting at a higher return. And here, so I'm expecting a lot of points. So I'm thinking, okay, well, the odds for a Marcelo Montoya or a Jacob Kiraz to score, they were down at like 160 or something. Like, it's not worth doing that. You're almost better off trying to get them as a 2-try scorer instead of a 1-try scorer. But I looked at Preston. He'd scored in 3 of his last 4 games. The Titans had conceded the first try in 4 of 5 games. The Bulldogs had scored scored first in 6 of their last 7 games. And then you saw it. Preston, he was in a one-on-one situation now, expertly tackled. And I think it was Brimson that tackled him, but he gave the offload for the first try for the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So he's right in that spot. And, if there was a few meters difference or a couple of seconds difference, maybe that would have been his try. But then obviously later in the game, he did score as well off a good, I think it was a kick he scored off. So that's kind of, the feeling around that game. Bulldogs severely limiting the chances the Titans would have to score. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We can bring up the territory, 65% territory in the game to the Bulldogs. Titans only having 1,200 run meters. The 32 tackles inside opposition 20, 6 line breaks to 2. It all just kind of paints the picture that it was essentially a domination by the Bulldogs, and they're not a team that blows out their opponent. They grind, they make sure they're in a winning position, and then they hold their pattern. If they get more opportunities, of course they'll try, but they're not a team to put kind of their foot on the throat of the opponent. They just make sure they
No.
win and keep things tight.
Where the Titans basically, I don't know, I don't want to sound too groove, but they too harsh, but they destroy themselves. They pretty much put their own foot on their own throat often because, like you said, that game is exactly the game that translate exactly from the stats that we talk about over to what the score is. Because, like you mentioned at the start, it is just the Titans averaging bottom 3 in all the key attacking stats and a bottom 3 in all the key defensive stats, where Canterbury, it's the complete flip side. Like, they've just dominated, they grind and they get the win, and Titans just, I don't know, open their legs and take it, basically. So
Bend me over the couch. But
yeah, please. They beg for it. So it's going to be interesting to see how long Des Hasler stays. There's starting to come a little bit of media whisper now, so it'll be very, very interesting to see. He certainly won't get his. You won't see him coach there after this year. It's just if they
he's
can
got
be
a year
bothered
left.
to do. Yeah, a bit. I don't know. I don't know if they sack him at the end of the year if they end up last, because they got to do something again.
But how much money do they have? Like, they can't just keep sacking players and coaches and paying them.
That's what they do. Maybe that's the problem. They just got to ride it out so they can fill up their bank again and actually start paying players or whatever. Lure some of these big guns.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
The second game that I had on Sunday was the Broncos and the Panthers, and I predicted a Bronx bust-up in this one. A 6-game losing streak the Broncos had against Penrith, and I said it's gonna finish. The Penrith defense, I alluded to their rank of 13th in opposition line breaks, and also here around the Rugby League eye test analysis of the, I'll quote here: monumental collapse in defense that just isn't just tied to field position. It's a result of mental errors, low cohesion, and overall lack of effort. So they were conceding more tries from set restarts than in previous years, and opposition field position had barely changed. Brisbane were on a roll. Their forwards making meters, their backs are cutting up opposition defenses, and I expected fireworks and expected it to be a high-scoring game, given how the Broncos had been scoring, but it all essentially just blew up in my face. And you see here that the Broncos or Panthers just edged in front in possession and territory. The Broncos were restricted quite a bit in run meters. Do you have their average run meters per game available to you that we can compare?
I do. Their average run meters, Penrith's average run meters are 1,437 per game, where Brisbane are 1,328. So Brisbane are 15th in run meters, and Penrith 8th.
There you go. So we've actually both then exceeded their average, but maybe it's more around how the Broncos make their meters and where on the field it is that.
Because I think I mentioned that the week before in the game that I covered with Brisbane, where it was quite interesting because their run meters 15th total, but they're actually like line breaks are 5.9 per game, so they're ranked 3rd. So it just felt like that they're not really getting, like, the actual crust of their meters aren't coming through the middle. Besides like Payne Haas and Carrigan doing a lot of work and ranking quite high, they seem to be getting a lot of their run meters through their line breaks than actual grinding, their backs doing the work. That's sort of how I break that down, because it's their two main prop forwards are I think top 5 in individual run meters, but that's where it stops for Brisbane.
I have another theory. I wonder, I'm just going to try and go back to the last game where they were belted because I think I might have looked at this as well, that the games they lose, they are terrible in running the ball. And the games they win, they're a lot better.
But it just feels like that game was pretty close when you look at, like you said, the territory was similar, the possession was similar, run meters, yeah, they did get beat by 200, but that's like not a crazy amount. Tackles in opposition 20, 38 to Penrith, 31. It feels like in this one that, yeah, Penrith took their chances and scored their tries where Brisbane couldn't get over the line. Right.
So Brisbane, they've won 5 games leading into this weekend and lost 3. So in the game against the Roosters, where, I mean, that's in Vegas, we can't really count that. The second game against Canberra, they're back in Australia. So 1,546 run meters against the Roosters in the win. 1,300 run meters against the Raiders in a loss. 1,500 run meters against the Cowboys in a win. Almost 1,400 against the Dolphins in a win. Here is an anomaly. Only 1,167 against the Tigers in a win. Only 1,200 against the Roosters in a loss. 1,100 against the Warriors in a loss. And again, we saw here in the game we just had where they had low run meters, again, in a loss. So maybe that's a bit of a tactic from opposition teams. If they're looking to beat the Broncos, it's restrict their run meters and they go forward, try and gain more territory through kicking and making them work it out of their own end. Because especially when Reece Walsh is there, they're not big guys running it out of their own end. Jesse Arthurs and Reece Walsh aren't big. It's Selwyn Cobbo. Like, he's a big guy, but he's not making a ton of meters from that dummy half run first off the ruck kind of thing.
Yeah. And their second rowers aren't doing a lot of work either. Like, you've got in this game against Penrith, Payne Huss had 170 run meters, Carrigan 138. But you look at Jordan Ricky, 24 run meters. Hetherington, 29 run meters. You've got Piakora had 99. Xavier Willison, 39 run meters. So when you're talking about like the big bodies that should still be doing a bit of work, their second rowers and their locks are doing nothing. Corey Jensen had 108 off the bench, but otherwise, yeah, they're not getting anything. Like, then it's just pretty much that it's Carrigan and Huss doing mountains of work, but not getting a lot of go forward from their other bigger bodies that they do have. So I don't know. It certainly points out a vulnerability, doesn't it?
Yeah, they struggled a bit defensively against the Panthers as well. The Panthers haven't been fantastic in attack. And the Broncos, they're ranked 3rd in opposition run meters, 3rd in opposition line breaks, 6th in opposition possession. But
good defensive side, really.
But 15th in opposition tackles inside 20. But I think that also has to do with if you're looking at the difference. So maybe they're turning the ball over, their opposition is getting territory, they're getting the ball in good situations. Because I think Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt are doing a lot more attacking in the kicks. Even when they're 40 meters out, they're bombing it. So their opposition are maybe getting the ball on the 30 instead of the 10 and are making that progress forward. But also, your tackles inside 20 are going to be a lot if you have good goal line defense, because teams aren't scoring tries. They're continually getting tackled in the 20-meter zone. And as you look at the Newcastle Knights, one of the best defensive teams in the league, they're 17th in opposition tackles inside 20 because teams cannot get over the line. They're just continually playing the ball, trying, and getting turned away. So I think that's an interesting thing to take in, that the Broncos' goal line defense is pretty good, but they failed in this game against the Panthers.
And that's why he went 0 from 3.
That's why I went 0 from 3. Long story short.
Yeah.
The Storm and the Raiders. Now, this game, wow, there was so many things that happened here. I'm not a guy to bag referees. Been there and done that. But there was some interesting
I
calls
always try, and you always seem to get on their defense. Even off air today, I was
Mm,
trying to bag referees, and you jumped on the protect
yeah.
the little guy.
But I was left scratching my head a little bit at two decisions here, which definitely affected the outcome of the game. Those of you that would have seen it, Pappenhausen kicked a field goal with 5 minutes left. They were up by 6. The play the ball, well, the ball hadn't even been played. Trent Liero was getting tackled and was, in my opinion, pulled down onto the Canberra player and obviously he put his forearm out. But that you see that in so many tackles in the NRL week in, week out. But because the field goal was kicked, they reviewed the play of the ball and then came back and gave a penalty to Canberra. 2 sets later, the Raiders scored a try to level it. And then Utoi Kamanu was 12 metres out from goal, had the ball, and Starling was on the ground holding on to him. And then Utoi Kamanu got penalised for, it wasn't even for kicking because it looked like first the referee asked, did he kick him? And then he got penalised for inciting bad behaviour, or whatever the fuck that means. He had the ball and he was getting hassled. Like he wanted to play the ball to try and get his team to be able to kick a field goal, which they were in position to do again. And the Raiders player was holding on to him. That's a penalty every day of the week. But instead, he gets penalised for roughing, whatever you call it. And then Papali'i and everyone starts running in. And so a player each got sin bin from each team. But the Raiders, once again, got the penalty, moved up the field, and then Trent Liero gave another penalty for a head-high tackle, which was a penalty, and the Raiders kicked a penalty goal to win the game. So, I mean, my 5.5 would have won if that Pappenhausen field goal would have stood.
Yeah.
But
It's another win for the Raiders in the end. Like they're also just seem to be finding ways to win.
And I don't know what it is because I still don't rate them. Like they have good spots and some things that they do well, but are they this elite team that are so far up the ladder right now? I'm struggling to see it.
Yeah, but it's like that. But like the stats, they are a mid. In a lot of the stats, they're like ranked mid, around anywhere between 8th and 12th in most statistics that we look at, both defensively and in attack. So I don't know. You would think that they're going to start to regress, but they've beaten some good teams along the way. So they're going to start getting a easier run of the draw. They're not going to get affected a lot by Origin. Hudson Young, Corey Horsburgh. Otherwise, they're going to be pretty well intact. So they might just survive this year and play finals footy.
I think some of the stats that are important to take out of this game, which you can we've spoken a bit about Melbourne and the way they attack, the way they defend, that they're not fantastic, but they find ways to win because they're consistent. They're just consistently a little bit above average. That's the thing. You see here 6 errors, 9 penalties conceded, 2 of them directly affecting the outcome of the game. Only 27 tackles inside 20. We spoke about that they aren't a team that do the majority of their attacking on the goal line. They attack from the 30, the 40, from their own half. Some of these things, only 4 line breaks in this game, and I would have expected there to be a bit more scoring, but they did bomb a couple of tries.
That's the one that sort of stood out the most to me while you were chatting there. I was pulling up the different stats. Like they normally average 6.1 line breaks a game. So only 2 line breaks, but that's still 33% of their average lower. So, like you said, they're very, very good at scoring long range tries, getting big line breaks from their own end. They're not afraid to throw the ball around in their own half. And yeah, that just they got restricted, you could say. So the Raiders did do a good job in restricting that sort of flamboyant attack. And just off the top of my head, seeing the highlights of that game, like their tries came from those chances that they did get in their own half and did get some big line breaks. Which resulted in tries. So the Raiders were obviously very aware of that and were able to restrict the ball movement of Melbourne, which gave them a chance to win, and they got a bit of lady luck and come away with a win. So
just looking at the errors as well. So Melbourne, they've totaled 78 errors so far, or leading into round 9 in 7 games. So that puts them quite high up in the average. I don't have the average in front of me because I haven't built that
but
yet.
those other two games that they did lose, like against the Dolphins and who else they lost, another shocker. Who do I want to say?
But while you're thinking about that, they also forced the lowest number of errors of any team. So, and by quite a big margin. So they're not forcing errors from their opponents, which is interesting to note going forward. And that could also account for their poor field position because they're very rarely getting the ball back inside their opposition half. All these little things are interesting to piece together as you go along.
Yeah. It was the game against the Dragons when they lost 14-8 against the Dragons and 42-22 against the Dolphins. Their error count must have been huge from the eye test of that. Just remember them dropping the ball in their own half constantly, and you're just like, what is happening with Melbourne? So some of those, they're usually one of the most solid teams, but they can just shit the bed a little bit.
So in that game that you spoke about, it was 13 errors to 6 against the Dolphins and 14 errors to 9 against the Dragons, both the biggest numbers of their season. Otherwise, it's around 11. 3 games have had 11 errors, 2 games of 1 and 8, 1 and 10. So errors definitely play a part in the Storm losing. All right.
What a breakdown. We ducked and dived into those games. I'm impressed.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look at...
So much that all my lights in the background are all just the batteries are dying. I'm on like safeties, the lights changing in my whole room.
That's an indication that we need to wrap up soon then.
Yeah.
Quick tips, early shouts for round 10. What do we got?
We've got Para Dolphins on Thursday night.
Parramatta win.
Yeah, it's a tough game. If we look at like our predictive modeling, it's saying based on results just from this year, it's saying 48.5 total points, with the Dolphins winning 26-22. Go based on last year and this year's results, the game total goes up to 53.5 there. So that's exactly along those lines that you were saying. Should be a lot of points in this one, backing that both teams' defense is rubbish. So, yeah. Let's get up the...
So then after that, the Knights and the Titans, that number, the game total is set at 47.5. You see our predictive modelling here? Even with last year's... and this is included the Knights game from round 9. So only a 38 or 39 point total predicted. So if you like an unders, then, and if you don't think that the Titans are going to be able to, the Knights will be able to score against the Titans, then hit the unders there.
South Brisbane, also another interesting match. The line is 10.5 to Brisbane, with the total sitting at 47.5. I think that's obviously based on how poor the South Sydney defence has been at the moment, and also I think a lot depends on what team list they put out. Last week they were missing Latrell Mitchell, Cam Murray, Cody Walker, Jack Whiten. There's not a lot of creativity left in the squad there. Unfortunately, Humphreys was also out last week, so that should be an interesting match. You would expect Brisbane to likely bounce back, so it'd sort of be going possibly leaning away from our model in that one, based on purely on recent form of South Sydney.
Raiders and Bulldogs. What number we have? Who's the favourite, and what's the line there?
2.5 points for Canberra as the favourite. Yeah, in Canberra on a Saturday afternoon. The line's 44. The game total is 44.5.
So we have the total smack bang on 44. It's 44.8.
Yeah.
So if you want to go anywhere, go the over. But we have Canberra winning by 8 points, which is in line with what the bookies think of them being the favourite. But whether or not it's that margin, that's what we have to take here. Do decision making.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough game because, like you said, Canberra, I don't know. Canterbury, everyone's red hot on Canterbury. Are they getting their boys back this week? I don't know. We'll see. Team lists.
Burton will be back. Kickow, did he have 3 games suspended?
Yeah.
No, Kickow played. Sorry, it was Tupanua got 5 weeks.
Yeah,
and Curran got 3 weeks.
So it's the Canberra forwards if they're gonna. I don't know, man. That's a tough call.
Bailey Hayward's he's won 100% of games he's played this year in place of Burton. Go. So
bench Burton.
Yeah. Dragons, Warriors. I think the Bulldogs win. I think their defense. Do you see Canberra scoring 26 points on the Bulldogs? I don't see that.
No.
Dragons, Warriors. I reckon that number is. What do you got on the betting there?
Yeah, it's 2.5. New Zealand are favourites by 2.5 points, and the game total at 45.5. So, yeah, I'm quite surprised that this is close, but it's obviously close at the bookies and close in our models.
Yeah. I would have expected New Zealand being like a 5.5 point favourite here.
Yeah, New Zealand have won now 6 of the last 7. I want to say, they've been awesome. I was getting flack on our individual game previews about backing North Queensland last week. Everyone's just like, you're crazy because the Warriors are the real deal, man. They could be back the Warriors. They just had a dud year last year.
Yeah,
definitely going against everything there and backing the Warriors for sure.
Cowboys Panthers. Now this is a lot closer than what we would have maybe thought, but 26 points predicted for the Cowboys in this one, a very high total. Judged on the game last week against Brisbane, do Panthers restrict the Cowboys to a lower total here, or do you think that the Cowboys have the attacking power to put some points on?
I think the Cowboys are, in my opinion, better at attacking than what Brisbane are. So I think there should be more points. Like we saw that Panthers gave Brisbane chances. They just couldn't score. So the Cowboys are much better in attack, I believe. They were red hot coming into that game against the Warriors, and you got to think that how poor the weather was when they were playing. It was like torrential rain. So we could just see the Panthers are a little bit hot and cold at the moment. They won a game, lost a game, won a game. You just don't know what Penrith Panthers team you're going to get. But I think the Cowboys can still leak. If Penrith are as clinical as they were against Brisbane in their attack, I think we will see a pretty high scoring game like the model predicts, because the line and it's pretty much spot on. Penrith are 2.5 point favourites at the bookies, and 48.5 is the game total. So it's pretty close. It's pretty much spot on.
What's the
it,
line
from the
at
25?
Storm and Tigers?
14.5.
Wow.
Considering, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so they're predicting that the Tigers' defense is not what it was to start the season, and that it's failing. I have to dive into that one a little bit more. I think Melbourne win, but if it's this margin, I'm unsure of right now.
Yeah, but it was what they let in. The Saints put on a lot of points, and the Saints put on 28 points. That's a lot for the Saints. So if the Saints can put on 28, Melbourne 36, it's not out of reach.
No. Sea Eagles are at home against the Sharks. Sea Eagles are one of the best home team over the last 4 years. Like a 60% win rate at home. It's outrageous. I think they beat the Sharks at home. What's the line?
It is 2.5 to Manly. And 48.5 game total. So all of the models there are saying that that's going to hit the under.
Yeah, I would be prepared to go maybe a Sea Eagles team total here. Not even knowing what the number is, but I would expect it to be probably. Can you check? Is it 28.5 or 26.5?
24.5. So the over on that. Yeah.
Print it, baby.
So,
all right, let's do this really quickly. We'll go Jez and Ryan. Let's just do our tips. Who do we think wins each game? Para Dolphins.
Para.
I'm also on Para. Knights Titans.
Knights.
I'm also on the Knights. I think the Broncos win. Don't know. Lost. There we go. I'm on Bulldogs here.
I'll take Canberra.
I'm on the Wars.
Me too.
You going Cowboys here?
Yeah.
After the Panthers, if I just crossed them off the list last week, saying they won't make the 8, now I'm backing the beat the Cowboys, who are actually pretty good.
Amazing how a week turns things around.
I'm guessing you're taking the Storm.
Yeah, and also taking Manly.
Yeah. All right. They're the tips.
All right.
Let us know in the comments if you've made it this far in the video. Let us know in the comments what your tips are for the top 8. We can maybe build a little bit of a running total here to see if we can compete. And see what happens.
No, but I think it's good to pick. A lot of our stuff's based around the lines and overs and unders, so it's good to go just smack bang head to head. Who's going to win? See how we go. 7 from 7 this week. 8 from 8.
Baby. All right. You got anything else to finish us up, or we get out of here?
Yeah, I think we get out of here, man. All talked out. I don't think I've ever talked for an hour before in my life.
It's big one, but good. A lot of good information. Let us know if you want to see anything different in the show. Subscribe to the channel, follow us, and head over to bets.com.au/NRL to see all the game previews. They normally will start coming up about Tuesday for the weekend's games. Thank you very much, and happy punting.